Hi, and welcome to The Late with and Natalie, presented by and Fluid Studios. Today I'm going to ask the question, and really made this show just to ask stupid questions, to make videos about stupid things. And the question today is, can you shoot to protect anymore in world with short form content? Because there's so many clips online of just videos that are just film clips and they're horribly edited, and it's like, of course they are, because they're never meant to be shown that way. So first of all, I'm going to answer the question, what is shoot to protect? What am I shooting and what am I protecting? So for an amazing guide, go and watch Noodle's videos on these. He's got 2 different videos essentially on aspect ratios, and one important thing to aspect ratios is that there's no one aspect ratio. So for example, this projector screen is 16:9, your computer is probably 16:9, and if you're holding a phone sideways, it's also probably 16:9. But that isn't true for everything. So a lot of cinema is much wider, and MacBook laptops, they are still 16:10, which is great for productivity, and old TVs are 4:3. And so when shooting movies, often they're wider in cinema, and then when brought to DVD, they're 16:9. So one example I want to show is Blade Runner, the new one. This top image is the original. This is 16:9, and you can see the entire scene. You can see good old Ryan Gosling, and his future car, and you can see the city, and it works quite well in 16:9. I can't remember if the original film is actually in 16:9. It probably is, if I recall correctly, but it could be wider because a lot of films are. Because when you're in a theatre, you can get wider. And IMAX is actually more square because of how big it is. And a lot of old TVs, so if anything's on VHS, it was in 4:3. And this is what the same scene will look like in 4:3. It looks kind of fine. You've gotten rid of a lot of the negative space in the image. So there's no negative space on the side next to the car anymore. The car is right up on the edge. And the negative space on the left to Ryan Gosling it's still there. That's where most of the negative space is, but a lot of it's gone. And that kind of diminishes how wide the scene is. It makes it more focused in. And here you can see even the minimal change, what the impact is, right? And this was a big problem back when movies were only viewable on VHS. And you had to make a movie, and you had to make it for a theatre which had a very wide very wide screen. And then you had to make it for TV on a VHS where you'd have a 4:3, a nearly square screen. And ultimately this would lead to having the movie be chopped in ways that didn't work. If you really want to know more about that, and I really recommend you do, go watch the Noodle videos. They go into much more detail, and it's much better, and it's focusing just on that topic. So finally, on the slide you'll notice there's a last one, and this is what it will look like on a phone screen. Now the crazy thing about it is the scale is definitely messing with it, but you wouldn't look at this and go, oh, that's the same as this. But it is. This is 16:9, and phone screens normally are 9:16, so they're horizontal, but they're still 16:9. That's why when you put it on the phone on your side, you can see the whole thing. And here, the same scene looks shit. This is just what it looks like. Because focusing on Ryan Gosling, you could get an okay scene, but you would get rid of the car. So if you want to include the car, you have to include just the door, but you get rid of most of the car, and then all the negative space is completely removed. This scene is completely fully packed of things to look at. But in the original scene, that wasn't true. It was supposed to be what looks to be a panning shot onto this city. And it's supposed to have your eyes wander, whereas there's no space to wander when it's on a phone. And another scene in Blade Runner again that really does this is this scene, which a lot of people know about because of the Ryan Gosling with the broken nose thing. So here is the original again, and this works really well. And you have the woman, and you have at the back, you can see it being tearing apart as a hologram. Why is that not a holograph? Okay, that's an etymology loophole. I'm going to look down. Rabbit hole. And you have Ryan Gosling on this side, and it works. And in 4x3, that also works. This scene works very well in 4x3, but it still loses some of the information. Because now this woman isn't so hologrammy anymore. You can't see the back, which adds hologrammy. Luckily, I didn't have to cut much of the negative space behind Ryan Gosling, which is also quite important, as this scene is about showing how alone he is. But ultimately, it gets even worse when you put it on a phone screen. Trying to put the scene on a phone would be horrible, because you can only get her in there. You can't get him in there properly, because you'd have to cut it down. And you can't get him with her. All you would get would be him and a tiny bit of finger. So you really just have to focus on her, but the scene isn't about her, about this giant hologram, it's about Ryan Gosling. And so here you can see how framing changes the scene completely. And I want to see if you could get something and shoot and protect it. And I want to see how the impact is of taking something and then putting it to a phone version and a widescreen like TV version. And so to do that, I went and got a scene from Always Sunny, and I'm going to show it in full, and then I'm going to show you my version.
I got some turpentine, some wax, and some high-gloss boat paint. This shit is really expensive.
Oh, dude, yeah, you're telling me. I picked us up some new slacks and docksiders so we could have the right look, and fit in and everything. We're running pretty low on remaining dick towel money, though.
Plus, we gotta fill that thing up with gas.
I know, man. We gotta pop by the department store, pick up the mattress. And I want to get a nice one, too. You know what I'm saying?
The what? The mattress? What do we need a mattress for?
What do you mean, what do we need a mattress for? Why in the hell do you think we just spent all that money on a boat? The whole purpose of buying the boat in the first place was to get the ladies nice and tipsy topside so we can take them to a nice, comfortable place below deck and, they can't refuse because of the implication.
Oh, okay. You had me go in there for the first part. The second half kind of threw me.
Well, dude, think about it. She's out in the middle of nowhere with some dude she barely knows. She looks around her. What does she see? Nothing but open ocean. There's nowhere for me to run. What am I gonna do? Say no?
Okay, that seems really dark.
No, it's not dark. You're misunderstanding me, bro.
I think I am.
Yeah, you are. Because if the girl said no, then the answer obviously is no.
No.
But the thing is she's not gonna say no. She would never say no because of the implication.
Now, you've said that word implication a couple of times. What implication?
The implication that things might go wrong for her if she refuses to sleep with me. Now, not that things are gonna go wrong for her, but she's thinking that they will.
But it sounds like she doesn't want to have sex with
you. Why aren't you
you.
understanding this?
I don't...
She doesn't know whether she wants to have sex with me. It's that
she doesn't know?
That's not the issue.
Are you gonna hurt women?
I'm not gonna hurt these women.
Okay.
Why would I ever hurt these women?
I don't know.
I feel like you're not getting this at all.
I'm not getting it.
God damn. Well, don't you look at me like that. You certainly wouldn't be in any danger.
So they are in danger?
No one's in any danger. How can I make that any more clear to you? Okay, it's an implication of danger. You know what, just drop it.
Let's drop it.
You're not gonna buy your shit and let's get out of here.
So, that scene, which I forgot to cut the ending out of, is the implication. And this is an amazing scene. A lot of people love it. It's purposely in bad quality because it's more about the visual information, right? So this scene works really well in 16:9. That's what how it was originally shot. I also tried to get it in 4:3, and it works very well as well. A lot of actually early the early seasons of Always Sunny were in 4:3 because it was made for TV, and TV at the time was 4:3, but nowadays it's 16:9. But a lot of scenes that have conversations like that work really well, no matter the framing. As long as there's only two people in them. Because often how you frame them is you always have one person towards camera and one away, and you kind of interchange between the two. That works well, really, no matter what. And so next I'm going to show you how it would look like if it was 16:9, which, as we've said, it feels bigger. Again, the scaling is very different, but in actuality, it's 1/3 of about 1/3 of a 16:9 scene if you got them and stacked them next to each other. So here's my edited scene.
The lady's nice and tipsy topside, so we can take him to a nice, comfortable place below deck, and, they can't refuse because of the implication.
You had me going there for the first part. The second half kind of threw me.
Think about it. She's out in the middle of nowhere with some dude she barely knows. She looks around her. What does she see? Nothing but open ocean. There's nowhere for me to run. What am I going to do? Say no?
That seems really dark.
No, it's not dark. You're misunderstanding me, bro.
I think I am.
Yeah, you are. Because if the girl said no, then the answer obviously is no.
No.
But the thing is she's not going to say no. She would never say no because of the implication.
You've said that word implication a couple of times. What implication?
The implication that things might go wrong for her if she refuses to sleep with me. Now, not that things are going to go wrong for her, but she's thinking that they will.
But it sounds like she doesn't want to have sex
Why aren't you
with
understanding this?
I don't...
She doesn't know whether she wants to have sex with me. It's that
she doesn't
That's not
know?
the issue.
Are you going to hurt women?
I'm not going to hurt these women.
Okay.
Why would I ever hurt these women?
I don't know.
I feel like you're not getting this at all.
I'm not getting it.
Well, don't you look at me like that. You certainly wouldn't be in any danger.
So here, that was the clip. And it was very different. And there are a lot of reasons for that. And it's not just the framing. I tricked you. This version is a minute long, so it can fit into a short form video. And that changes so much of the video. So we start in the middle. They're not talking about getting a boat, they're just saying the whole intention is to get them tipsy-turvy, like straight into what the implication is. And also there's no space for the thing to breathe. One of the funniest bits about the implication is how adamant the character is and how he just stares for like a second and just there's this empty space. And that's gone, because when you frame it, the scene doesn't have an empty space, but also the cutting doesn't as well. And an issue that happens when you put something in a box is that you cutting at different points because you want to focus on different things, even if the scene doesn't have a cut. So this ultimately leads us back to the question, because shooting protecting, I think, has changed. So, what does it mean to shoot and protect? What is shooting? What are we shooting? What are we protecting? And so here is an example of what I was saying before, that you can only really do a third, right? So if you shoot to protect, which part of the video do you protect? Right? Do you have everything in the middle? That would suck. Most things when you're doing a movie, most shots often have a 2/3 rule if they have a cut. Because that way you instantly know your eye where to go, and there's still some space for the thing to breathe. Very little movies have stuff in the center. Mad Max is one of the most easy to cite examples of a movie where everything's in the center, and that's because cuts were on average a second per cut. So everything had to be in the center for people to know where to look. But if I'm shooting protecting, do I want to have everything in the center? Because that would be great for people who are watching it just on their phone, but not everyone is looking on their phone. Maybe they're looking at the wide scene. Also, what if someone puts Subway Surfers on the top? now the aspect ratio isn't 16:9 anymore. Maybe it's back to 4:3, or just a square. Or maybe it's put at the bottom and it's 16:9 again, and there's 5 movies on top of each other. So ultimately, shooting protecting is much more complicated, and that's why I find this question very interesting. Does it really work in this modern day? And to answer that question, first of all, I thought about it, like I did that example, but I also found something that actually does shoot to protect for both a short form video, but also a 16:9 widescreen video. And that is a Baby No Money song. And here's the music video of it. Here's some shots from it. I don't want to show the video. And I couldn't find the vertical, but I know it's a vertical video. I know it. Don't tell me it's not, because it is. Just because it's not on YouTube doesn't mean it isn't. It's on Instagram and probably TikTok. But on YouTube, it's in the wide format. And here you can see, for example, there's so much negative space on the sides. We can see that clearly when they're showing the thing on TikTok, all they're going to have is just the center here. Just this good old center. Or like this. Again, just the center. There's so much open space on the sides. And like this scene as well, open space, that isn't really doing anything. None of this information is important. And so it's questionable what is this, are you destroying the art piece for the people that are watching it in wide form format just so that the people that have it in short form format will enjoy it more? And you would think that all of it is in the center, but the entire video isn't. Some of it, like this shot towards the end, has it in the third, 2/3, which works, but that's more videos, and you always have to question if someone is doing this independently, because a lot of these film clips are independent and they're annoying, right? They are interpreting how to edit this clip. So if you have everything in the center, that would work great, because they'll be like, oh, awesome. And like they'll see a scene like this, and they'll go, oh, everything is between these two literal bars. I can just do that, crop the whole movie like that. I've got loads of clips. But then they encounter a scene like this. Do they now just see the hands? What? But ultimately, even if you assume the best case scenario that you have that people on the internet don't loot your content, then, and you produce it by yourself, right? You produce all the versions of it ever known, and you make a version that's for a phone. Do you want to have scenes like this, where all the information's in the center and the rest is just empty and void and kind of lifeless? Do you want to have the opposite, where you have a scene full of information that you want to tell, but only half of the people that ever watch it get to see that? And so, going back to the question, I want to give an answer of what I think is possible. So, can you shoot to protect anymore in the world of short form videos? Ultimately, I think, yeah, maybe.